Good evening. Welcome to the Infrastructure Oversight Board, meeting City of Burbank, July 22nd, 2021. Let's all rise and salute the flag.
All righty.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving to roll call.
Armin Avazian.
Present.
Walter Brennan Jr.
Present.
Maria Coronado.
Present.
Greg Jackson.
Present.
Vanessa Rochelle.
Present.
Tamala Takahashi.
Here.
And Jeff Vandervoort.
I'm also here.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any announcements? Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. Just wanted to let the board know that you might be aware the City Council is not going live in person in August as we were anticipating due to the new mask updates. I will keep the board posted as to when the commissions and committees and boards can start meeting together. And obviously I look forward to getting in the room with you guys, but we can't do it yet. So that was one thing. And then just briefly, congratulations, Madam Chair and Board Member Brennan and Board Member Takahashi on your reappointments. So look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I believe you're muted.
Sorry about that. Mr. Hahn, did you have something you wanted to? Oh, thought I saw your hand there. All right. So do we have anyone for public comment?
We do not at this time.
All right. So moving to the consent calendar, we have the approval of the minutes.
Will we approve the minutes?
Okay.
From last meeting.
Madam Chair, I'll second it, but I would like an opportunity to just ask for a minor correction.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If it's okay with other members, on the third to the last paragraph, there is a sentence or paragraph that reads, Board Member Vandervoort encouraged that the Chandler Bike Path or Chandler Bike Access Project be top priority and to use Measure P funds to update the bike path. Could we change that update? And it's probably me who said something incorrectly, but to change that to read, to complete this section of the bike path at the existing train tracks near Victory.
It will be better.
It's a minor correction. I'm certain it was me who fumbled or mumbled what I said, but if we can make that correction, I think it'll be a little better for the long-term record.
Great.
So noted.
Yes. All right. So we have a movement and a second. Let's call for a vote.
Armin Avazian.
Oh.
That was an approve. Yeah. Okay. Walter Brennan Jr.
Yes.
Maria Coronado.
Yes.
Greg Jackson.
Yes.
Vanessa Rochelle.
Yes.
Tamala Takahashi.
Yes.
And Jeff Vandervoort.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great. All right. So moving to reports to the board, we have the CIP bid and construction phase presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. Happy to pass this along to Mr. Hahn to provide the presentation to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Good evening, Chair Coronado and members of the board. My name is Hoon Han, the Capital Projects Program Manager. And tonight I will share with you the CIP bid process and also the construction phase of CIP projects. This is an item that the board members actually had requested, wanted some more information on how contractors can actually bid on projects and how they could become eligible to get on the list at the city here. So this is a diagram that the board members have actually seen before. Previously, it was just the information was the planning and budgeting, design and construction. Since you requested the bid process information, we inserted the bid process in there. It's actually, the bid process is usually folded into the design process. So this is basically the entire overview of the capital project development process. And tonight, like I said, we will focus on the bid process and also the construction process and the phase of that. The bid process, basically it starts at the design phase in the sense that the design is required. The design, which is either done in-house or we actually hire a consultant to prepare the plans, specifications, and also the estimate for us. The plans is the detailed drawings of what the city wants the contractor to do the work for us. The specification, it actually has multiple parts to it. We have what we call generally the front-end document. The front-end document is the contract administration information that's actually vetted out through purchasing and also the city attorney's office. And it's basically has information on how the contract is going to be administered. It has information on the forms that the contractor needs to actually submit with the bid proposal, and also has some other information on the project or in some general reference information that the city actually would request on light projects. And then the estimate is what we used for the designer to design to, and that's the project, the budget amount that the council actually budgets for us for the project. And when that project, the PSNE is completed, we actually, that's the entire bid package that we submit to purchasing. And purchasing actually helps us through the procurement process and finalizes the bid document. And Ms. Kurihara is here tonight to speak to the procurement process that the city has.
Good evening, board members. My name is Lisa Kurihara, and as you know, I am an attorney here with the city. So before we jump into Burbank's procurement process, I wanted to give you just a little bit of background on what it means for our city to be a charter city. So for those of you who work in the construction industry or who are familiar with it, you may be aware of the California Public Contract Code, which is a California state law and generally governs administration and procurement of public works projects for general law cities. But here in Burbank, we are a charter city. And what that means is that the voters have adopted a city charter, which basically acts as a mini constitution for purposes of our local governments. Charters have the same effect as state law. And according to the California Constitution, charter cities have the power to make and enforce all laws that relate to what's known as municipal affairs. Now, by contrast, general law cities, or cities that don't operate under a local charter, do not have this authority over local municipal affairs, and instead they have to defer to state laws that govern these issues. So with that background in mind, courts have held that public works administration and procurement are municipal affairs, which charter cities have authority to govern locally. So as a charter city, Burbank is not subject to the California Public Contract Code, and instead our procurement procedures are outlined in Section 1205 of the city charter, as well as Title II, Chapter 2 of our Burbank Municipal Code. So all of that said, our process actually isn't that different from state law. For public works construction projects, the city typically engages in formal, closed, competitive bidding. And so basically to start, notice of a project is advertised in the newspaper at least 2 times before bids are due, as well as through the city's online procurement system. And Hoon is going to show you that in just a moment. Sealed bids are then submitted to the city, and they're all opened at the same time at a formal public bid opening by the purchasing manager. Now, once bids are opened, they're evaluated and a recommendation is made to the city council regarding which bidder qualifies as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And what this means is that the bidder not only submitted the lowest price on their bid, but they also complied with all of the requirements in the bid specification, and they're capable of completing the project based on things like their work history and references, things like that. That's what we're looking for when we're evaluating based on lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Now, if for some reason there are issues with the bids that were submitted, or we discover that we need to make project changes, the city manager always has the authority to reject any or all bids that come in, and even to re-advertise the project altogether. So you would restart, the project advertisement and contractor bid submittals and the review and evaluation. Ultimately, all bids are presented to the city council at a public meeting, along with staff's recommendation regarding who came in as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And the council then is the entity who awards the project. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this process, so I just want to point them out. First, in emergency situations where action is really required to preserve life, property, or public health, or where a disaster situation exists, the charter allows the city to make emergency purchases without going through this formal closed competitive bidding process. I mean, as you can imagine, this process takes a bit of time. It can take a few months from, bid advertisement to actual, submittal, evaluation, and then selection by the city council. So in an emergency situation, it certainly is in the city's best interest to be able to waive that lengthy process and just go forward with the emergency procurement. Now, second, the city council has the authority to waive bidding whenever they find it's in the best interests of the city. And so one example where they might do this is if they choose to procure services through an alternative method like design build, where you would hire one consultant to furnish both the professional architectural and engineering designs, as well as deliver the construction component of the project. And so in that instance, proposals are often still submitted through a closed competitive process, but the award may consider things other than just price. Because of that professional design component, you'd be looking beyond just whoever came in with the lowest price and looking to the firm's, past experiences and really selecting based on qualifications because of that added professional design element. So those are the two exceptions to the competitive bidding process. And that's all I have. So I'll let Mr. Hahn continue on with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you very much. So as Ms. Kurihara shared with us, the advertisement process. So after the project, the bid package is complete, a notice of inviting bids is actually put together with the help of purchasing. And that has general information on the project as far as it's a statement telling basically the contractors that there's a project that the city of Burbank is advertising. And if you have an interest, then follow these steps and go to Planet Bids and to download the project, and you could actually bid on it. The notice of inviting bids is actually uploaded into what's known as plan rooms. Plan rooms are basically, these are private firms or companies that actually operate where a lot of the contractors actually register with them. And what it is that we provide the information, the plans to them, and they actually notify everyone that's registered with them. And then so all the contractor who is under their umbrella gets notification. And also the LA Times, we advertise in there for 2 consecutive weeks. So that's a requirement that we have. And our charter states that we have to actually advertise in the largest publication in the area. So that's why we do advertise in LA with LA Times. The Planet Bids, that's a cloud-based a bidding format. Platform that's relatively new. In the olden days, it was just I say olden days, probably about 10 years ago, we just had plan rooms and we would just advertise with the plan rooms and contractors would contact the cities and we would send the bid packages to them. But now with the with Planet Bids, you could actually register there and you could actually download all the necessary information related to the project. And basically all the contractor have access to that information as long as you're registered with the city of Burbank, in the Planet Bids. This is a sample of the notice of inviting bids, and basically this is kind of a boilerplate. We will make modifications as needed to advertise for that specific project. And this is the last page of that. And then this is the actual list of the plan rooms that we actually advertise with. And so as you can see, there are 8 plan rooms that we actually upload and provide information regarding our projects. And it is very useful in that. And so they do help get the information out to the contractors world. And this is the Planet Bid. This is the front page when a contractor or anyone wants to register. You could see, you could be a new vendor registration there. You click it and you just go through the process. The registration process is somewhat of a lengthy process, but they do ask a lot of information. So because City of Burbank, we do advertise all of our projects on here. As a contractor, you actually register for the type of work that you are interested in. If you're a general contractor with license B, then you want to just do projects that you qualify for. So you would register and request information just related to that project. Or if you are even a distributor of, let's say, printer, then you could say supplies or something. So it's very specific on, so when you register, you actually register to the information that you actually want be noticed in the future. The bid opportunity, if you click this, it would actually take you to the website where it has a list of all the projects that the city is actually advertising. And this is a snapshot of the bid list of all the projects that actually are advertised, and also projects that are closed and are also pending. And then sometimes projects will be canceled also for various reasons. So this has the history of the city's projects on here. And as you can see, you could do search by keywords, departments. So it's very user friendly and it has a lot of information. Contractors should be able to navigate through this. And I would say most contracts who do work with the public agencies, they know they are registered with Planet Bids. And so it's, as far as getting notification, when City of Burbank advertise bid packages, they will get notified. This, I know it's a little bit hard to see. I just wanted to show you. This is a list of all the contractors that actually downloaded the project for the sidewalk repair project. The sidewalk repair project is actually under construction at this time, but as you can see, there's a lot of contractors who actually did open it, look at it, and download the project to see if they were going to bid on it or not. And some are actually plan rooms. I think they also download information too. But as you can see, there's a lot of general contractors and subcontractors who actually download to look at it to see what their interest is there. And after the bid process, after the contract is awarded, in order to go to the construction phase, or once you go to the construction phase, after the execution of the contract, first thing that we would do is have what's known as a pre-construction meeting. Pre-construction meeting is essentially a kickoff meeting for construction that you, as a project manager, you would go over the scope, budget, and also the schedule. And this is when the contractor would provide the schedule to the city, and we would review it, and eventually we would either approve it or we would request revisions based on how they put their schedule together. And also we would go over protocol. Protocol meaning the key part of the protocol is the communication chain, to share with the contractor what is the communication chain, in the sense that basically what I tell contractors when I'm in construction or when during pre-construction meeting is, if you have a question, you need to ask me, not the inspector, not somebody else out in the field. If you get direction from somebody else and you do the work, it's on you. It's not on the city. Basically, any change, any direction that's given, it has to come through the project manager. So basically, there's a process called an RFI, request for information. If a contractor has some ambiguity in, they're not quite sure on how to proceed on a certain task, then they could put what's known as a request for information, and that would go to the to the project manager. And basically the project manager would give direction to the contractor to how to proceed on those, on that steps there. And the submittal process is basically on a contract. If it's a building construction project, then there's a laundry list of submittals that the contractor would have to submit, whether it be color, paint, rugs, just anything you can imagine. If you are remodeling your house and you want to take a look and have a say in it, basically this is the submittal process where the contractor would submit the details of what they're going to provide the city. And the public noticing is a noticing to the public for the construction, where the contractor would notice within a certain radius of the construction zone, and to notice the impacts to the community. And if there's a traffic impact, then there'll be notifications on that. If there's information on if there may have been no parking in the area, then there'll be some general information on that also. And basically, and any other items that may be in discussion as far as utilities, or if there are, contractors sometimes have questions on the projects. And so it's a very informative meeting to have a very informative meeting to have with the contractor, so that we could actually start in the right foot there. And then after the pre-construction meeting, you have the city issues what's known as a notice to proceed. That's a official notice. The notice of proceed states the date when the contractor is going to be starting. And the contract always has a number of working days. So when a contractor bids on a project, they have a specified number of days that they're supposed to complete the project. So the notice of proceed is day one. And then if it's 30 working days, and if the contractor hasn't completed the work in 30 working days, then there is actually potentially liquidated damage. So the notice of proceed, that date being memorialized is extremely important. And once that's issued, the contractor will start work. And once the task is completed, the work is performed, then the city would issue what's known as a notice of completion. And this is the sample notice of proceed, and this is a boilerplate that the project manager would complete and issue to the contractor. And then this is the notice of completion, which actually our city engineer, Dan Rin, actually signs and executes. And our city clerk actually signs off on it. I know Mr. Bergman's, in his experience, I know that the other agencies, I believe council usually accepts the project and issues the notice of completion. But City of Burbank here, we don't have to go to council. The notice of completion is executed at the director's level, who Mr. Bergman assigned to the city engineer there. And that completes my presentation of the bid process and construction phase, and I am available for questions.
Question? Madam Chair, can I make a question here?
Yes,
Thanks.
Mr. Brennan, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Mr.
Bozzi.
Hood? Yeah, I just want to say this is really well organized, and I can appreciate it, having worked with several cities, different roofing and waterproofing projects around Southern California as well as in Arizona. This is well done, and I commend you for it. And I know others are going to have some questions on this, but the process you put together here and what I've seen in the LA Times as far as your bid request, excellent. Keep it up. Thank you. No other questions or comments?
Mr. Abazian, did you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hunt, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions from Ms. Kurihara. First, Does the city charter require the city council to adopt the project plans and specifications? If so, what time of in the process it gets adopted by the city council?
Yes, so when the award of the contract is taken to city council, the project plans and specifications are included in that contract. And so the city council awards projects by resolution, and in the resolution, they will formally approve the plans and designs for the project. Simultaneously, we actually have a provision in our municipal code that authorizes the city engineer, the public works director, to then make changes to those plans and designs. I believe we also include that authority in the resolution that council authorizes.
I see. So with that said, we don't go to the city council to authorize the city manager or city clerk's office to advertise for bids.
I can help. Thank you. Member Bazian, I understand the question quite thoroughly, actually, because it's one of the things that I noticed Burbank and their procedures here. Long story short, for the board edification, typically I've seen staff go to council 3 times. One is to have the PS&E package approved and authorize staff to go to bid. 2 is for the contract award, and 3, as Mr. Hoon mentioned, was the staff recommends, we've seen the work, it's complete, and we authorize us to file the notice of completion with the county recorder. So in Burbank, it's that one step. We develop the plans and we advertise them through procurement, and we bring the PS&E package to council along with the contract award, and that's where everything happens.
If I may say as well, just to add on to that, we don't have that 3-step process as Mr. Berkman explained. However, council does see these projects in preliminary phases, oftentimes ahead of awarding the actual construction contract, because we bring these projects forward through the capital improvement project, plan list, through the budget. They are approving the project concept at various stages well before it actually comes forward for award to the contractor in the construction phase. So I hope that helps to bring some clarity.
And if I may add to that, I in no way want to make sure the board understands I don't see an issue with the process. As a matter of fact, the benefit of this process, Mr. Hahn mentioned each staff report, it takes months kind of to get to that phase and get it on the council's agenda. So we do save probably 4 to 6 months in the entire project schedule, not having doing this one-step process along with all the times that council gets to take a look at and digest and discuss the projects during the capital project development process. So, good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions? Ms. Rochelle, please go ahead.
How is it decided? What's your standard for determining who will be on your proposal committee or the proposal team? Do you usually choose one person outside your division, or do you choose, how is it chosen which civil engineers will be on your proposal team to review the packages?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I quite follow your question, but as far as the civil engineers, if you're referring to how do we select our consultants, we have
to review your proposal packages. So when the proposal packages come in.
So as far as the bid proposal, when it comes to purchasing and it's actually open, it's not, the civil engineer is not the ones who actually review it. It's the purchasing department who actually reviews the document to make sure it's responsive to the spec, has all the paperwork in it, has the necessary bond information, and that they're not missing anything. And also they will do what's known as a bid tabulation, where they actually list all the contractors who actually submitted proposal and by line item of what they were supposed to bid on, and then they would tabulate that to make sure that there weren't any errors in it. So it's a lengthy process for purchasing to go through. And then if there are references that we have to call, then purchasing actually makes those calls and vets all that out. So it's a process that purchasing really helps us to navigate through that process.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple real quick questions. Mr. Hahn, the notice inviting bids, which is published in the LA Times, I've seen it periodically. Does that go their complete circulation throughout Southern California, or is it key just to the Burbank and maybe Glendale area? Because I don't see any for Torrance or Manhattan Beach or other jurisdictions.
My understanding is it's in the regular circulation. Manhattan and Torrance, they may be just advertising in their local jurisdiction papers. So they may not be advertising in LA Times because they're not required to do that.
Okay, I seem to remember it used to appear those type of notices in the Burbank Leader when that was part of the LA Times network of papers.
Times have changed.
All right. One other thing about the notice to the public. A while back, I received this notice on my door talking about notice of street improvement. Next week, the city will begin concrete repair work on your street. And joy in our household over receiving this. Sadly, the next week, nothing happened. After about 3 or 4 more weeks, I finally contacted Ken and said, had we been forgotten? And he investigated, and there were technical reasons, and I don't know, it was late spring, there might have been some weather issues. Anyway, a second notice appeared, and it had more information. It said, there will be restricted access between 4:19 and 4:23. So that told my neighbors and myself that something was happening, and something did happen. And it was pretty amazing. I mean, after a quarter century, our street was repaved, and they were very efficient. This was a private contractor, not city staff, I believe. They did it in 2.5 days. There was a 2-block stretch they did here, and then there were other blocks in our neighborhood. And I commend the process. Our street is beautiful, and I thank you very much. Those are my 2 comments.
Through the chair, if I may, Mr. Jackson, that is a great example of a part of what this board has helped bring to the city, which is our annual residential paving rehabilitation program and annual project. And it's made some great strides. You might remember the presentation that I provided the council where our pavement condition index, our PCI, has been, we made significant progress on it. And I believe on our future agenda, yes, November, December, you will all see an update of the pavement management study and see where we are. So thank you very much for seeing the good work that you're helping us do.
Yes, new pavement is always exciting. I do appreciate that as well. Ms. Takahashi, did you have a question? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Hahn, for your presentation. I agree with Mr. Brennan that it is a very organized process, and you presented it in a way that made a lot of sense. So I appreciate your doing that. And then Ms. Kurihara, I appreciate too your explanation of the charter city and how that makes us a little different than, say, like LA or other cities. I have a few clarifying questions, and maybe I missed where you said them, so I apologize if I'm asking a question you already answered. So you were speaking about the closed bid public opening meeting. Where is that meeting? How does the public view that meeting? What is can you speak a little bit to that about how that works?
The public bid opening, the city clerks, I believe it's actually held at the council chambers, if I'm correct, Ms.
Yes, it is. And so instructions are included in the bid specification. So it's usually in the advertisement. It usually includes the time and date of the bid opening. And typically during non-pandemic times, it's in person in the council chambers. During the pandemic, we did include a virtual option, but I do believe we've gone back to in person, if I'm correct. So, but that is usually it's in the advertisement and in the bid package.
Okay, thank you. And is that the meeting where the decision is made for who wins the bid, or that's just to show that it's a fair process, that everybody's been, it's been a closed process and fair? Okay, so who after all of the bids are assessed and you go through that process that you were describing, Mr. Hahn, which sounds like a really good audit of all the proposals, who makes the final decision of who wins the bid?
So when you're saying, basically, if the contractor is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, then it is their contract for them to have, basically.
Is it purchasing who does that, or?
Well, it's basically the recommendation comes and the project manager will be notified of that, and then eventually it will go to council to award the contract.
Right, it's
So
city
council
council.
ultimately awards the contract.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm just not understanding it. Who decides this is the proposal that meets the requirements to then present to council?
So
Is that purchasing?
Yes, it would be purchasing because
Okay.
they've done all the due diligence to make sure that they are the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And
And
just
then-
to follow
yeah.
up, if I may, I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Go ahead.
All of the bids are furnished to council. So council reviews everything, and staff obviously provides a recommendation based on all of the bid tabulation and everything like that. But council is furnished with all of the bid documents as well as the public. They're available for review once the agenda is posted for the council meeting. And so, as Mr. Hahn and Mr. Berkman mentioned, it is City Council who ultimately awards and determines who will be awarded the contract.
Okay, so when it gets to council, staff recommends a particular bidder because of they meet the criteria, but the council sees all of the other bids to compare it to. Okay, and where is that information available? Is that on the agenda? A link on the agenda? Is it on the website? You said it's the public can access it too?
Yes. So there's usually a listing of all of the different bidders and their prices attached to the staff report, I believe. But in-person documents are available for review They're available for review in person at the City Council offices.
Okay, got it. And then I had kind of a general question about during this process, how do I phrase this? Is there a way to prevent underbidding so that a bidder doesn't underbid to win the project and then during the project then go over costs of what they said it would cost?
So I think I understand what you're saying. When you're saying underbidding, say that the engineer's estimate is $1 million and a contractor comes in and bids it at $500,000. So to us, it doesn't make sense. We would evaluate their detailed bid information and to see if the contractor made an error. Sometimes in-house, when they're actually putting all the information, they sometimes have clerical error. So clerical error is a justification for the contractor to withdraw their contract and we withdraw their bid so that they could actually say, we made an error, clerical error, we can't deliver a project at that cost, and we would like to withdraw our bid proposal. Or if a contractor is bidding low to try to win the contract, but the thing is, and we see that, it makes sense. They say, all the line items that they're actually bidding on, they could deliver the project at that price, then we would really evaluate it. And if they have good standing in the community, in the contractors world, and they deliver like projects, then there's no reason for us to not award a contract. So as far as there is sometimes a contractor, they will do what's known as an unbalanced bid. Unbalanced bid is when a contractor would front load the bid item in the sense that, say it's $1 million project, but there are things that they're going to do early on that they want to get paid, so they have cash flow. So if they do that, then we could see if it's an unbalanced bid, we could actually call that out too. Say the demolition they put for $1 million project, they put $300,000 for demolition. So that doesn't make sense to us. They're front loading it and making an unbalanced bid so that they could get paid out early to create cash flow for themselves. So we could point those out and kind of really question, does this bid make sense? So we can evaluate it in those technical sense too.
Okay. And so so you do look at then to the history of that particular contractor, and if they've gone over their bids, or if they have a history of being accurate with their bidding, and does that come into consideration at all?
We wouldn't know the history as far as the accuracy of their bid proposal with other agencies, but we definitely do reference review. And the reference is project specific. If it's say that we're working on a building that's $500,000 building, and then we'll say there should be like project of a building for a public agency that's valued at about $400,000 to $600,000, for them to have worked on it, and then they would put references and showing that they've worked on that project and the agency, and then the contact information, and then the purchasing would do a background. They basically reference review on that.
Okay, great. And my last question is there a place on the city website that has all of the different projects and bids, awards, and all that located, so that, let's say someone in the public wanted to look for something that was, awarded 2 or 3 months ago, they don't have to go through city council minutes, but is there a place that they can see all the awards?
I would say probably as far as the award by council, the best source is the council agenda, the history there, the archive.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I had a follow-up. Mr. Hahn, we have an active construction website, I believe.
Yes, as far as the, I think there's a layer in the GIS system, I believe.
Right, and we are looking to improve upon that. I can let the board know.
Yes.
Great. Mr. Obazian and then Mr. Vanderpoort.
Thanks, Madam Chair. One last question from Mr. Hahn. Do you have minimum requirements for the contractors to bid on your project?
When you're saying minimum requirements as far as?
Like experience or license or anything similar?
Yeah, I mean, every project I would say is project specific as far as minimum requirements. Definitely licenses, depending on the types of project, they would need that. If it's a building project, then you need that, I believe it's license B. And then if you're doing concrete work, then you need that specific contractor's license. And as far as there's reference on the dollar value on the projects that they should have like projects. So that would be basically, every project obviously is different in that.
Mr. Vanderpoort, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hahn, is it possible for the next project or one that you would consider a good project for us to see, to provide us just an email link or something to all of us to let us know that a project is coming to council for award and what the agenda item is, and then we can look at it and maybe familiarize ourselves with such a procedure, and then it will just be a good example of what is happening. Is there something coming up in the near future?
I'm not aware of anything that's coming up in the near future right now, but maybe what I could do is the concrete project. That's probably one of the more recent ones that we've awarded. So I could send you the link to that project. So that would have all the information I think you're looking for.
That would be great. It would give us a shot at understanding what you've just given us verbally in the presentation, and maybe see if other questions come up. But thank you for the presentation. It was very clear.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpoort. Ms. Rochelle, go right ahead.
Is there a pass-fail process when the bids first come in, and then the team goes in and there's a pass-fail, and that's how I think that's what we were touching on before with minimum requirements. Like maybe there's a pass fail in the beginning, and then those who've passed that part, they go on to the scoring aspect. Do we have that?
We for construction projects, for what's known as a design bid build, there isn't a pass fail. Like Ms. Kurihara said, a different project delivery method is such as design build. Design build is not a lowest bidder. Lowest responsive bidder is actually the most qualified. So it's a different process. So I guess you could say, depending on how we proceed with that process, if we do what's known as a request for qualification, so that could be a pass fail in that they have to show minimum qualifications that they qualify to do and perform this type of project. And so we could actually fail in essence, and a contractor who doesn't qualify. And then, but in a traditional design bid build, there isn't a pass fail in that they just need to submit. They would fail if they're not responsive, if they don't have all the necessary documents, they don't have the necessary references. So if they don't provide all the information that the specification states, then they essentially would fail and they would be considered not responsive.
Okay, and what about their financials or their capital? What percentage of the bid package is that? Like their financials? 10%. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not sure if I follow what you're saying.
So their capital or their financials, how sound the company is financially? Where does that play into?
For a design bid build, I haven't seen financial for that kind of information, but if we are doing a design build project, we can request that. I've seen that to show their financial, how stable they are.
And if I may as well, we don't necessarily look into the company's financial statements, as Mr. Hahn said, for a design bid build construction project, but we do require security in the sense that we require bonds that are in the amount of the contract. So if they fail to deliver the project as stated in the contract, we have bonds that we can collect on through a surety, who is basically in ensuring that the work will be done. We also have very stringent insurance requirements for liability purposes, things like that. So I don't know if that sort of goes to your question or not.
It kind of does. I think every city or the county, everyone does it a little bit differently. That's what I'm picking up on.
Thank you, Ms. Rochelle. Mr. Berkman, did you have a comment?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hahn covered it.
Perfect. Ms. Takahashi, go right ahead.
Thank you. I had another question that popped up during this discussion. So a number of meetings ago, we had a presentation about the P3 projects. And I'm wondering, in particular, thinking of the library coming up, the big one, would that process, because it seems a little bit different than what we're talking about here, where they're not just doing design build, but also management, I think, of it as well. And so would that be a similar process as this for bidding for that role, or how would that be any different, or would it be similar?
Yeah, so definitely the P3 it's a different process. It's not a design bid build process.
Okay.
So we are actually working on a program trying to establish how we're going to approach and move forward with the project. But generally speaking, we're going to use the RFQ, the request for qualification and request for proposal process. And we are going to hire the most qualified firm and team that can deliver the project.
So will that one go in front of council too, though, by the time they get chosen, that will go in front of council like the others? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Takahashi. Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, a couple more things. I believe Vanessa had asked about checking the financial solvency of vendors. Walt Brenner and I were on the school bond oversight committee, and I'm sure Walt remembers the modular units at, I think, Disney languished for well over a year at the state architect. And our former city treasurer, Debbie Katka, who is now deputy superintendent, ran the financials and found out that the vendor was nearly bankrupt. That really was a shock to everybody, in the administration and to those in the Oversight Committee. So, I think to monitor the solvency of companies is important as we go forward. I know there's guarantees and bonds, but if there's no money behind them, leaves us hanging. A couple other questions. Does the city require the employees of these different contractors to pay prevailing wage or at least minimum wage? What if anything does the city have as a policy?
So every CIP capital project actually that has a bid package, it is a prevailing wage job, and they would have to provide a certified payroll to show that they're actually paying prevailing wage, and they also have to register with the state. I forget the Department of Labor, or I forget the actual agency, but they do have to be registered with the state.
Okay. And does the city give any preference to minority-owned businesses or women-owned businesses in its bidding process?
Sure.
For the bidding process, I am not aware of any preference. As I believe it's just lowest responsive bidder that we actually award a contract to.
Okay, well, that's a council decision, obviously. All right. Well, oops, Ken.
Member Brennan and board members, I would add one of the things that triggers a minority women-owned business, for example, would be the potential of grant use. There are certain grants that are tied to having certain percentages of DB, WEB, MEB use. So, of course, if the color of money requires us to have a certain percentage in our contracts, we absolutely get those in there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Rochelle, you had a further question?
Yeah, just to follow up on we were talking about, I don't know if we mentioned living wage. So once the project starts and the vendor said, okay, we provide a living wage or minimum wage, are there any other, are there random checks that happen during the project to make sure that they're actually paying the living wage or the minimum wage?
As far it's not the minimum wage, it's the prevailing wage. It's actually all the wages are set by the state for different trades, so they are required to pay that. Our inspector keeps track of who's on site and what they're doing. If they're doing a labor job, if actually they are an operator of machines, so all that is documented, and that information is actually cross-referenced with the certified payroll. So the certified payroll is the actual official legal document that the contractor has to submit and upload to the state. So there is a process that they have to go through, and the city monitors that. And also, if the contractor, if a worker, a labor feels that he's being not paid what he's supposed to, then he could always put a request into the state and saying that he's not getting paid. Say that he's actually working as an operator but being paid as a labor, then that's not right. So he could actually make the request to the state, and then state will notify us. And if there is a claim and if it's validated, what the city will do is we can hold retention and to pay the worker, make them whole. So there is a checks and balance. There is a process to make sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to. Obviously, we try our best. I'm sure there are times that things do fall through the cracks, but there is a process that the city works through, the project manager, the inspector on the site, and also the state.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I'm sure.
Mr. Brennan.
Just one quick comment that I'd like to make along with what Mr. Hoon had to say is generally on prevailing wage projects, if there's a contractor that, should we say, is a little less than honest sometimes, it's not uncommon for whichever unions are being represented on the job, to have a representative show up to find out to make sure that everybody's being paid correctly. In which case, the process that Mr. Hoon talked about, how they get reimbursed, shows up. And it's be kind of ugly, but yeah, my experience with those schools as well as cities, it happens. So I haven't heard about you in Burbank, so I'm sure things are swell here. Thank you, Miss.
Sounds like we have a pretty good process going, a lot of checks and balances. I had a couple questions though, and I'll comment. If you're looking for the prevailing wage for operators, laborers, and so on, it's on the Department of Industrial Relations website. That's where you can find that information. But I was wondering, does that include healthcare? Do we have anything in our city that that requests a contractor to make sure they're paying healthcare? Is that part of the package?
That is not.
It's not?
It's not.
All right. Do we have any further comment? I think we're going to move on then. We will file this report, and we appreciate staff's hard work on this and all the comments. And Ms. Kurihara, I appreciate your input as well. I concur with all the board members on the hard work of staff and the thoroughness of the process here. So we're moving on to the introduction of additional agenda items. We have some pending agenda items for August. We have the fire protection and city facilities adjacent to hillside areas, as well as the fourth quarter report for the year 2021. Mr. Vandervoort, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the additional agenda items, and you were reading the pending agenda items, sorry to interrupt, but in the upcoming review of the paving management study, because we've been reasonably successful, is it possible to get a little update on the situation of the alleys in the city, which I know heretofore have been delegated as the poor cousins who don't even count at the dinner table? Is there a chance to get a sort of a survey then? And maybe it's not possible in a short period of time until November, but it'd be nice to know where we are with the status of the alleys in the city and how far behind we are with repaving them or updating them.
Yes, the alleys will be part of the report in November, December.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have a list here of the pending agenda items coming up. Do we have any further agenda items that we'd like to introduce at this time? Ms. Takahashi.
May I make a comment on a pending agenda item at this point? Or okay, so for August, coming up next month, the fire protection of city facilities adjacent to the hillside areas. I'm wondering, maybe there's nothing to include on this topic, but I'm wondering if it might be possible to include anything else that has to do with climate change or climate prepping for the, infrastructure for increased heat and just in general, if that could be added to that as well, because that's a lot of the fire protection issues are around climate change. So I'm just wondering if that might be an appropriate place to put that information. And if there is a lot of it, I could see it being a separate agenda item, but if there's just maybe a couple things here and there that are starting to come through, it'd be a nice place to include that. Or any thoughts on that? Any besides the fire?
Through the chair, for the board's consideration, climate change it's tied to fire protection, of course, in the hillsides, but this item came about for a specific request from the board to say, what are we doing to protect our city facilities, which is under your purview as the advisory board to the council. The climate change is a very deep and has a depth and breadth of something that I am sure the fire marshal who will be doing the presentation can touch upon how the fire department is considering probably the potential increased intensity and volume of fires, I would think. But I would recommend not needing to add it to the agenda title itself if the board so pleases, but we can make sure the fire department, I believe battalion chief and fire marshal can touch upon it in their presentation.
Okay. Because I was thinking the heat can affect things like the wear and tear on our infrastructure. Do we need more facilities for protecting our, protecting our residents and in the extreme heat and our city employees and just like that kind of thing? But again, we can touch on it during his presentation, and I can also bring it back with more specifics if that's more appropriate. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So I think that's probably it, unless we have any further comment on the rest of the agenda items for this year. All right, then. So we'll move to adjourn. Our next scheduled meeting is August 26th at 6 p.m. and we'll be right back here on Zoom. So thank you, everyone, for input. Thank you again to staff for the hard work. Everyone.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Good night.
Good night now.